So we got the World Cup going on, as all you guys know, and it's a total mess. It really should have never been sent to Qatar in the first place. They spent over $200 billion getting prepped for this thing. And that the village is falling apart, the place where people spend 185 pounds a night to stay there. The AC is not good enough. It's too loud at night. They banned alcohol 2 days before the event was supposed to start after they had gotten assurances that no, there will be alcohol. By the way, little asterisk to that point, they're allowing alcohol in the luxury boxes. Wow, what do you know? Shocking. So for the average person, you can't get it, but for the elites, yes, you can get it. And then, of course, they use slave labor to build this thing. So 6,500 migrant workers died as a result of this. It's a total shit show. Well, a silver lining here is the Iranian soccer team stood in solidarity with the mass wave of protesters currently protesting the Islamic regime in Tehran. So let's watch a little news segment on it here, and then we'll talk about it.
Now, before the game, none of the Iran players sang the national anthem of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The captain, Ihsan Hadsafi, said before the tournament that the national team supports those who have died in protests across the country. Human rights groups say more than 400 people have died and 16,800 have been arrested since demonstrations started against the government 2 months ago. Well, with the big screens in the stadium, the fans saw the Iran players not singing the anthem, and that led to thousands of fans clapping. Only a team official who was standing next to the coach, Carlos Queiroz, appeared to sing on the TV pictures.
I'm very proud of them, the way they stand up, they keep fighting, score 2 goals against England under these circumstances. I'm very proud and did the post one time. They did well, I'm very proud of what they did. But of course, it's one example. 14-18, we have full support from the fans. And now you saw what happened today. So that's why my duty, it is probably to invite the fans of Iran that they're not here ready to support the team. They should stay home. Why they come here to be against the team? We don't need them on the stadium. It's much better they stay home. Because to have fans that they only support the team when we are winning, we don't need them. It's something that the players, of course, they feel when they are playing.
So the reason why that was so brave is that, look, it's an authoritarian theocracy in Iran, so they're really risking their own personal safety when they get back to Iran. The regime could easily lock these guys up for the protest that they did, because they're going to look at it, the regime is going to look at it like, hey, you fucking embarrassed us. You embarrassed us on the world stage. You didn't put a united front out there. You stood in solidarity with the protesters who were trying to take us down. So, you're the enemy. So it was super duper duper brave. In the same way that, I watch tennis a lot, and there are some Russian tennis players who have stood in solidarity with Ukraine and against Putin's invasion of Ukraine. And again, that's ballsy, man, because not only are you personally at risk, it's also your family members, if they're in Russia, are at risk as well. And so, nothing but massive credit here. Now, let me show you. This is from Channel 4, which is a British public broadcast service. And they take a slightly different perspective on it. Take a look at this.
Iranian players not singing the national anthem of the Islamic Republic. To us, an extraordinary protest. But to the people watching at home in Iran, not nearly enough. In these tower blocks in Tehran.
So they say, that's not enough. They make the argument, hey, there's other things you could have done that was an even bigger show of solidarity. This is the point that they're making. Look, from my perspective, I think what they did was brave enough, to be honest, because it's already putting their physical health and well-being in danger. But according to some, they say you should have went further, and they'll explain what they mean by that.
They're jeering the fact that the team is playing at all. These shopkeepers even cheered every time England scored tonight. The loathing for the national team illustrates the loathing for the regime.
It was really significant, I think, for the world outside to see that moment, like a national team not singing the national anthem, it means nothing for the Iranian inside Iran. Iranian wanted them not to participate in a game, or like take a knee, or do this sign of cutting their hair, to show something much more meaningful than this.
So that, look, would those have been more clear signs of solidarity? Yes, they would have been. But at the same time, I mean, it's not like they sang the national anthem and did what the regime wanted them to do. So, I mean, I think this is kind of being a little hard on them, right? Like, I see where they're coming from, but at the same time, I think it is a little rough on them, given that they did show solidarity. I mean, I'm sure they were afraid the further they go, the worse it would be for them when they get back to Iran, right? And their family members. So if they say, we're not playing the game, or, the take a knee thing or the cut the hair thing. So they're saying, look, I mean, very strict rules in Iran, especially as it pertains to women. They have the morality police there who've been cracking down on women for showing too much of themselves or cutting their hair. And, of course, the thing that sparked all of this was when an Iranian woman was killed in the custody of the morality police over some fucking non-issue, like not covering herself or some shit. So they did stand in solidarity. I think they deserve credit for that. Having said that, I can see why some people wanted them to go further.
Because the situation has got so much worse. This was Javan Rud today in the Kurdish region of Iran. Here the Revolutionary Guard was using live ammunition against anti-regime protesters. One man has been hit and is dragged to relative safety. Another is left lying on the pavement. He's been killed, they shout. Also dead Karwan Kader Shokri, a 16-year-old protester killed by the Revolutionary Guard. His mother kisses him one last time. The funeral procession has turned into a protest on the streets below and on the hillside above, the Kurdish village of Rujula. Freedom and unity for Iran, they shout. In the town of Izeh, in Zahedan province, the funeral of Kian Pir Falak. He was only 9 years old.
Well,
first the regime turned on girls and young women who weaponized their hair. Now it's turning against the children. These are the faces of some of the 50 killed so far.
One thing that is obvious now is that the Iranians are not going back and they're not afraid. So for years, the protests had this pattern of Iranians are going in and trying to change something, and then they get cracked down and move back. This time, every crackdown from the government led to something more bigger from the people.
Are the events inside Iran already a revolution? Can guns silence these protests now in their third month? The regime hopes so, inspired perhaps by its allies in Syria.
So one of the issues here, and they go on to talk about this in the interview, is that you're not really going to see the kind of massive change that people are hoping for unless you have basically the Revolutionary Guard and the law enforcement arm of the Revolutionary Guard and the regime turn on the regime. And, one of the issues they're dealing with is there's body cameras on them. And if they're not cracking down on the protesters sufficiently themselves, then there's punishment for them. And so it's kind of a tough situation for everybody involved. And you would hope that, the law enforcement arm and the morality police or whatever, they sort of turn on the regime. And I don't think the morality police would, because they literally enforce hardcore, extreme Islamic law. But you would hope that there is sort of a tipping point and they do rise up against the regime. Now, let me be clear about something, because I feel like this point is very important and a lot of people miss it. There's a difference, right, between saying, hey, I support these protesters. I hope they can improve their own country and get their country to be more democratic and protect more rights and stuff like that, and saying, hey, the U.S. should intervene and help topple the regime. Because on that question, should the U.S. intervene, I am a hard no. I am a hard no on that. You can say, verbally, hey, I support the protesters. I hope they can bring about change. I'm on their side. I'm against the theocracy. I'm against the authoritarianism. But we should also be clear, we are not in favor of U.S. military intervention, because you shouldn't trust our intentions in the first place. And also, there's a long history of U.S. intervention in Iran, which actually led to the current situation. So remember, we overthrew a guy by the name of Mohammad Mossadegh, who was a democratically elected leader in Iran, and I think this was in the 1950s. So we overthrew him, and we put into place a dictator named the Shah, or called the Shah. And we did that because the United States got very cheap oil, and the UK got very cheap oil. And so when Mossadegh was elected, he said, I'm going to nationalize the oil and basically give the proceeds to the Iranian people. That's when the US and the UK intervened and said, we don't think so. So basically, it was a war for natural resources. We said, we're still going to get that cheap oil, and we're not going to allow you to democratically choose otherwise. So we overthrew Mohammad Mossadegh, put the Shah into place. Now, the Shah is an interesting character for a number of reasons. He without a doubt, secularized Iran. So on social issues, he was actually more pro-freedom. But on economic issues, he was just corrupt, and he kept the oil and the proceeds going to the West. And so what happened was, people were organizing against the Shah. By the way, some argued he secularized too fast, which helped lead to a reactionary backlash in the form of Islamic extremism. One of the only places in Iran that you could freely organize was in mosques. So you had this, far-right Islamic revolution that built up in the mosques, and eventually the Shah was overthrown in the Islamic Revolution of 1979. And so it's still the same government, not literally the same leader, but the same government, the Revolutionary Guard, the Islamic regime. And that's who we're dealing with today. So our intervention in the first place sort of led to this point. We shouldn't intervene again because we don't have a right to, nor do we have the pure intentions. But having said that, of course, I support the protesters on the ground because they just all they want is more social freedom. All they want is a more democratic and representative government. And so, without a doubt, I support them. And I think that what the soccer team did here is, I do think it's very brave. I understand some people wanted them to go further, but given the circumstances, I get that it was a massive risk. Who knows what's going to happen to these guys when they get back to Iran? But hopefully these protests bring about real change. And the final point I'll say is this. To me, this doesn't change a single thing about how I still want to get back into the nuclear agreement with them. Because there's clearly a difference between domestic issues and international issues. And I still don't want World War III. I still don't want some regional conflict to break out between, say, Israel, one of our top allies, and Iran. And they were abiding by the nuclear agreement when we were in the nuclear agreement, and Trump was dead fucking wrong to rip it up, which only made it more likely that they'll get nuclear weapons. So the correct answer is still to get back in the nuclear agreement, even though, again, we should stand in solidarity with the protesters. So anyway, that's my breakdown, and credit to the soccer team for doing what they did. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take zero ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.